Hey everybody! In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you a very fun and quick card with the new Bohemian Borders set. This is similar to that IKAT set that I showed you in an earlier video. I'll link you to that. And I'm just going to use one element of this set, the little diamond. To me, this has kind of a Native American look to it that I really like. Now I'm lining this stamp up on one of the vertical lines of my quilting guide. And that's just so that I can get it straight on the cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp it onto the quilting guide with the Early Espresso ink. Now I'm going to take a piece of cardstock, and this one is not a full card front size. This is 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I'm going to position it underneath the stamped image so that it's level. I'm just sort of looking at that horizontal line, making sure the cardstock is square to that, and then lining that up. Now this image has kind of a hand-drawn quality, so it's not perfectly perfect, but I can use the little lines on the end to make sure that it's straight. So I'm stamping it the first time in smoky slate. And then to keep adding to the design, I'm just going to use the quilting guide every time. Now on my blog, I'll have a link to a site where you can print yourself some free graph paper if you don't have these quilting guides. I like these because they're kind of a heavy-duty plastic. But you can also print onto a transparency this exact same grid, and then you can use that as a positioning guide. Now I'm also going to do this one in smoky slate. I'm going to do a little row of smoky slate. I'm sort of making this up as I go along here. That's what I like to do on my videos. I like to sit down and see what happens when I start stamping, and then you have to watch it, whether it works or doesn't work. So you can see how well these line up together. It really is easy to do. And they look like they're holding hands. Little aliens holding hands. So next, because I love this color combination, I'm going to add some Daffodil Delight. Now the little lines that stick out of the shape are designed to actually overlap each other just a little bit. Or I don't know how they were designed, but what I'm saying is if you want them even, they have to overlap a little bit. So you'll see me putting it on top of, partly on top of the smoky slate design that I had stamped on the bottom. Now here I'm trying to figure out whether I want another row of these or whether I want to keep going with this pattern I'm developing. And I end up deciding that I'm just going to keep going with the pattern and not have one off the edge. But it takes me a minute. So sorry about that. Now the most important thing here is just to keep the bottom of your cardstock square. That's the part where it's easiest to get kind of off at an angle. And so the quilting guide really helps. And then of course the grid paper underneath, because you want to make sure that it's straight. Now I've moved on to Tangerine Tango, and you can see I'm building kind of a little arrow. So at the top of the arrow, I'll use Real Red to finish this off. And see how it looks like, sort of like a little Indian blanket? I love that. It's a really fun pattern. So now I have this fun little arrow, and I have a greeting in mind for this. But I want to show you, I have a little smudge of Daffodil Delight, and I'm just going to use my sanding block to sand that off. You don't have to worry if you get little fingerprints on white cardstock. And as I'm doing this, I'm putting another fingerprint down at the bottom because I haven't cleaned my hands off. But you can just come back in with the sanding block and very lightly sand the surface of the cardstock, and you would never, ever, ever know it's there. So if if you're like me and you don't stop and clean the ink off your fingers, you can do this as many times as you need to. And it's perfect every time. Now I love this. You've got this. You've seen me use this before. This is from the new catalog. And I thought that the arrow shape that I was building with the border stamp would be perfect to go with this greeting. It could kind of point to the greeting. Now, since I can't see through this one, I'm also going to use the positioning guide just to stamp it once and then line up the cardstock. It doesn't have a straight edge on the rubber, and so you can't tell from the back of the stamp if it's going to be straight and level. So this is just a good way to make sure that it is. And I'm going to use those last two cross lines on the red shape, and I'm going to center them over a horizontal line, and that's going to help me line up my greeting. If you spend just a minute, you can get it perfectly straight. And it's okay if your cardstock sticks out of the MISTI. It won't get crimped. And then the top portion of my card you can see is also level. It's lined up with one of the grid lines on the quilting guide. So those are all your little checks and balances to make sure that everything's completely straight. And then I remembered to get the ink off of the stamp before I started. Don't want to stamp that in red. I like it to be a nice crisp black. So I'm using VersaFine ink. And it's perfect. Nice, clean, and simple card with a lot of emphasis. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching.